Thank you. Good evening. It is now 7 p.m. on Thursday, September 12th, 2024. We are having our regularly scheduled council meeting. We will start with our opening prayer with Friar Mike from Our Lady of Victory. If you would like to come up to the podium.
During this time of year annually, the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops provides information on faithful citizenship. So the prayer this evening is all about that. Gracious God, affirm through our words and actions the dignity of every person, each made in your image, even those with whom we may disagree who are made in your image. Help us to respectfully listen in order to understand experiences different from our own. Help us to engage in critical examination to ensure that our perspectives are rooted in truth, that our sources of information are unbiased, and that we do not open ourselves to manipulation by partisan interests. Help us to form our consciences through prayerful reflection, study of your word, and our faith traditions' teaching, along with guidance from reputable experts. Help us to reflect on our own values and seek with others to identify shared values. Help us to be open to the process of dialogue that can require change of perspective, our own and that of others, in service to the inviolable dignity of all and the common good. Help us to be bridge builders who participate in constructive dialogue based in shared values, mutual exchange of gifts, and the humility to together seek the good. Help us to see differences in perspective as opportunities for creative tension, which can yield solutions for the common good. Help us to work with others in order to identify creative solutions rooted in our shared values. We give you thanks and we pray this in your holy name forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you. And for our Pledge of Allegiance this evening will be Girl Scout Troop 90673, led by their troop leader, Emily Bush.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Jonathan Bolas.
Here.
Adam Bozick.
Here.
Jessica Epstein.
Here.
Mary Gutman.
Here.
Donald Pavlik.
Here.
Ted Roy.
Here.
Nick Rubino.
Here.
We are all present this evening. Next item, item 4, correcting and adopting a previous meeting minutes from 8/22/24 council meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any corrections to the minutes or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Jessica Epstein.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Donald Pavlik.
Yes.
Ted Roy.
Yes.
Nick Rubino.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolas.
Yes.
And the minutes pass 7-0. Yeah, swig of water before we start this one. Financial reports, item 5. We are in receipt of fire and EMS fund transfer in the amount of $235,000. Street maintenance and repair fund transfer in the amount of $240,000. Bond retirement in the amount of $100,000. The Upson Raps Historic Preservation in the amount of $4,299.50 to council on 8/29/24. The appropriation report, fund report, revenue report for the period ending 8/31/24 to council on 9/6/24. The August financial reports to council on 9/6/24. The Tallmadge Recreation Center profit and loss report for the period ending 8/31/24 to council on 9/6/24. Income tax comparisons for the period ending 8/31/24 to council on 9/6/24. consolidated investment report for the period ending 8/31/24 to council on 9/6/24. Income tax by source report for the month of August to council on 9/6/24. And lastly, the revenue comparisons for major funds for the period ending 8/31/24 to council on 9/6/24. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion about the reports or questions for Director of Finance?
I just had a quick one. The historic preservation, could you just define what that is? Or remind me?
Yes, so those are funds that are donated to us by the Historical Society, typically when we do any type of improvements to Old Town Hall.
Okay.
So they had donated some money to have some cameras and stuff put in over there. So the city is contributing, since it is our building, technically in our property, that amount towards that project.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Jessica Epstein,
Yes.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Donald Pavlik,
Yes.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes. Those reports are approved by a vote of 7-0. Moving on to item 6, public hearings. We currently have no public hearings tonight. Item 7, community input. I'll ask Mr. Steve Wood, the superintendent of the Tallmadge City Schools. He's going to give us a presentation on the permanent improvement levy that will be on the November ballot. He'd like to share some information about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bozick. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of council, administration, for allowing me the time to speak tonight. Issue 32, that's our issue number. So Jim Brown, tribute to the great Jim Brown. We're issue number 32. Issue 32 is a replacement levy for the Tallmadge City Schools permanent improvement funding. So what I'm going to do is kind of try to describe what this is all about tonight, answer any questions you may have, and then Mr. Fairhurst, our board president, is also here, may have a few words to say as well. So what is a replacement levy? This is a replacement levy. So property levies are confusing. They're really hard to understand, especially for a common taxpayer. And I think that understanding, the more folks understand them, the more closer we can get to that common good, working towards the common good that Father Mike discussed in his prayer tonight. So the good thing about a replacement levy is if you understand the way a replacement levy works, you go a long way towards understanding the way property tax and school property tax funding works in the state of Ohio. So you see, what is important related to school property taxes is that they do not grow with increases in property valuations. I think that's the most common misunderstanding, is that people see their property valuations jump and they think, well, the school's going to have plenty of money now because our property values have jumped. It just doesn't work like that because of an old law, 46-year-old law called House Bill 920, that prevents the amount of money being collected by a tax levy to increase in proportion to the increase in property values. So essentially, as property values rise, the millage rate, the 0.1% that the tax rate is based on, falls to keep the amount collected the same. It's called millage reduction. So again, as property values rise, the percentage, the mini percent that it collects at, falls to keep the amount the same. So we have to ask for more money just to keep up with general inflation, all other things being equal, because the amount collected does not increase with inflation. So what a replacement levy does is resets that millage back to the original amount. So this PI levy permanent improvement levy has been in place for Tallmadge City Schools since 1976. 1.25 mil is the millage rate it was originally passed at. Has been replaced twice. The last time, 28 years ago, 1996, it was replaced, and essentially it was reset back to that 1.25. But what's happened in 28 years since then? Property values have climbed, so that millage rate has been reduced to keep the amount collected about the same. So back in 1998, this collected about $375,000, and it still collects about $375,000 today. Back in 1998, that was a millage rate of 1.25. Today, that millage rate is 0.55. That's what it's collecting at today. So what we're asking for with the replacement levy is to put it back, reset it back to 1.25 mils. So why is permanent improvement levy important? And it is critically important to protecting the investment that the community has made in our schools. And our community, Tallmadge, has been so generous to our students and our families over the last 15 or 17 years. We are very, very proud and very thankful for the amazing facilities that we have. And it is critical for us to keep them great. And in fact, in our 5-year strategic plan, our board has made it a priority that our buildings remain safe, clean, functional, and worthy of the community's pride. The permanent improvement funding is the best way to do that. Here's why. It's because it can be only used on physical assets. It can be only used on things like paving, roofs, etc. It's got to be used for keeping our buildings nice. So you say, well, why is that important, Steve? Well, the nature of school funding, I'm not going to go back and belabor the nature of school funding and the fact that sometimes times get tight. And superintendents and boards sometimes are faced with questions like, wow, do I continue with this English program or do I replace the roof on the building? What wins every single time? The programming, of course, the academic programming. By having the permanent improvement set aside that can't be used for programming, you protect the assets. You have resources available to replace that roof when it needs it, to repave when it needs it. Just give you a sense, the $375,000 that we have today, it would cost about $150,000 just to reseal and restripe the pavement in our facilities right now. It's half gone just with that. Prices have gone up quite a bit in 28 years in terms of keeping our facilities nice. So we are committed to ensuring that the facilities stay nice, and this permanent improvement funding is an important way to do that. And the PI levy, this replacement, would be an effective manner to do that. So the question a lot of people have, of course, is what is it going to cost me, Steve? So $2 a month per $100,000 of appraised value. $2 per month per $100,000 of appraised value. I think the typical home in Tallmadge might be around $200,000 appraised value at this point. So it'll be $4 a month would be the cost, the additional cost as a result of this replacement levy. Does the council or mayor or administration have any questions for us?
Superintendent Wood, what do you expect that $375,000 to grow to once, if this is approved?
It's that, 0.55 to 1, it'd be about right out $800,000, Mr. Rubino.
Thank you.
I would say there's a rule of thumb in the state of Ohio that they like to have your permanent improvement funding be somewhere between 3 to 5% of your general budget. Our general budget's around $30 million, so that low end of that would be $1 million permanent improvement funding. So it's a little bit less than what it kind of generally recommended. But we think we can make $800,000 go far. And we're, of course, very proud of our spending record. We remain below the state average in terms of spending per pupil, and we're one of the lowest in the state of, or in Summit County in terms of spending per pupil. So we think our community is getting a great return for their investment.
Superintendent Wood, can you remind us, how old is the high school? Because everyone calls it the new high school, but
It's still 15, Mr. Pavlik, it was opened in 2008, so it's old enough to drive this year. And if you've been in the high school, and most people that walk through that building say the same thing, is they can't believe it's 16 years old, because we are very, very proud of how we've been able to maintain and want certainly to continue that. I will tell you that we've started to see some issues with the roof that's causing additional expenses. The furnaces, the HVAC, the chiller's going through a pretty significant rehab. So it's getting to that age where the costs are going to climb. And we want to stay ahead of those and make those assets serve this community for many, many, many more years to come.
What was the expected life for the high school?
Typically, we've gotten 50 or more years out of our buildings, Mr. Rubino, so that would certainly be the case with that high school. If not longer, it's a pretty awesome building.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Superintendent Wood?
Mr. Wood?
Yeah.
Can you share, I know that there is a website that has some graphics, images, a lot of the details that you provided. Can you give us that for anyone that might be watching on YouTube, that website?
Yeah, why don't I, if I could, if there's no more questions for me, Mr. Fairhurst can talk about Citizens for Tallmadge Schools because as superintendent, unfortunately, there's laws in the state of Ohio. I cannot encourage you which way to vote on this levy. You could probably guess how I'd like you to vote, but I am forbidden by law to advocate for either side of the levy. So I'll let Mr. Fairhurst talk about the advocacy group that's supporting the levy.
I have one additional question or clarification. You said that funds can't be used for permanent improvement. Specific funds are for specific things. You can't move money around from programming to cover an expense here and vice versa. Is that correct?
Well, Ms. Epstein, the way to look at that is permanent improvement funds are what's limited. So permanent improvement funds have to be used for buildings. So the legislation put that in effect to ensure that it was used for facilities and not for programming. So it's a way to reserve money to take care of community investment. So the way you can't move money from permanent improvement into programming. You can't use it to pay for teachers. You can't use it to pay for administrators. You can't use it to pay for even transportation or operating costs. You have to use it for things that have an asset life of 5 years or longer. So,
Okay, thank you.
that make
for-
sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Can I add to extrapolate on that a
Yeah.
little bit too, and to kind of throw out the concept that if there is a shortfall on their permanent improvement, they have to go to the general fund dollars that are used for education to fill those gaps. So they can restrict the permanent improvement, but if there's a permanent improvement that they have to take, they're going to have to take that away from the money they use for education.
Yep, absolutely.
Superintendent, I just want to thank you very much for coming here today and explaining this in detail to all of us. You do a phenomenal job with our schools, with our facilities, and very, very proud to continue to be a Tallmadge resident, especially with the education that our residents receive. So thank you very much for doing this for us today. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. So with that, I'll turn it over to Board President, Mr. Fairhurst.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Hello, good evening. Mark Fairhurst, President of Tallmadge City School Boards. Thank you so much for giving us a few minutes here this evening. Very, very appreciated. Really, what Mr. Wood has talked about and laid out for you, there's really not much more for me to add to that because he did a very good job. What I wanted to do is just take 30 seconds and invite you and those who are listening online Next Tuesday at the West Avenue Tavern, there will be a Citizens for Tallmadge City Schools kickoff committee meeting for the levy. It will be at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. You are all invited. Snacks, there'll be a cash bar. We'd like to kick off the agenda, the event, and you're all invited. So really, that's it. Short, sweet, and to the point. And again, thank you on behalf of the board, students, and teachers. Thank you for the few minutes you've given us here this evening. Very, very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairhurst.
Thank you, sir. So I'll ask anyone else in the audience if there's anyone else wanting to say anything for community input. No? All right. And again, thank you both for attending this evening. Moving on to item 8, agenda additions. We have none. Item 9, reports of the administrative officers, starting with Mayor Kilway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bozick. Just a couple quick little items. You should have been in receipt of the safety initiative from Chief Bohan earlier this month, and I did just forward you the run stats from Chief Underwood as well, so you should have all that information in your emails. Just want to give you a couple little updates to our safety forces. Our police department gave out letters of commendation to night shift B officers Cirillo, Trexler, Carlson, and Godine. They were awarded these letters of commendation from Chief Bohan for capturing a suspect attempting to steal a car from a resident's driveway on June 25th. The suspect fled on foot, but was apprehended due to the officers' teamwork and communication. And then also day shift B officers Snyder, Sivron, Sergeant Heatwell, and Tallmadge Fire Department personnel, Fire Chief John Underwood, Deputy Fire Chief Ben Stasek, and Lieutenant Todd Beatty received letters of commendation from Chief Bohan as well for their actions on August 9th in apprehending an escaped prisoner from another jurisdiction. That's very important. That person did not escape from our jurisdiction, okay? The suspect fled into a residential area with wetlands and dense vegetation, and Sergeant Heatwell coordinated his shift and worked with multiple agencies to establish a perimeter, while the fire department personnel, including Fire Lieutenant Beatty, deployed a drone to assist in the search, and their collaboration across the departments led to the successful capture of the suspect. We also have an update from the fire department. On August 24th, the Tallmadge Fire Department quickly responded to a smoke report on a home on Fernwood Drive. Arriving within 4 minutes and 32 seconds, the fire was located in the attic, was swiftly contained, preventing further spread. They worked extensively to pull down the ceilings and insulation to fully extinguish the fire, saving about $250,000 in property and belongings. I'd like to personally thank Battalion Chief Nick Sampson, Lieutenant Joe Klein, firefighters Grant Holcomb, Austin Hedgick, Taryn Mitchell, Brittany Jamine, Stuart Hunt, and Deputy Chief Basek for their commendable teamwork. Mutual aid was also provided by Mogator, Cauga Falls, Stowe, Akron, and Monroe Falls Department, and their quick actions and teamwork are commendable, and we're fortunate to have such a capable and dedicated team protecting our community. Very quickly, we had a couple ribbon cuttings and re-grand openings. Zeal Lifestyle Collective is the Tallmadge chiropractic that is rebranding themselves to add a broader spectrum to their business. That was on August 29th. And then we also had the grand opening of Howe Road Park, including the dog park. We just had our 9/11 remembrance, was just yesterday, or was that yesterday? Yeah, it was just last night already. My day's been so busy. And that's all I have for this evening. Are there any questions?
Great, thank you. Any questions for our mayor? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to Director of Administration, Economic Development.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of quick updates. A reminder, the West Avenue Overlay Community Engagement occurs on September 17th at 5:30. The mayor and planning and zoning, supported by the Department of Administration, will host a West Avenue Community Engagement to discuss the overlay and the path forward. Just a couple of quick notes. Budget development continues continues. First reading of the ordinance should be October 24th, and the tentative date for the work session for the budget with council is November 6th. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a few economic development, business retention and expansion visits to Tallmadge Collision. They've been here in Tallmadge since 1988. We went, also visited Herman Machines, and they are over 105 years old. So didn't realize that. They moved into our city several years ago. And then we also had a visit to the Akron Children's Pediatric office on Northwest Avenue. So great engagement with the businesses, and we continue to look for opportunities to expand our and improve West Avenue and the rest of the city. And pending your questions, that's all I have for this evening.
Any questions for our Director of Administration? No. Moving on to Director of Public Service.
Good evening. Just wanted to discuss a couple of the ordinances that are up tonight. Yeah, if you could go to the next slide, Sue. Anyways, hey, so ordinance 2024-56 is the chloride reduction grant, and it's a chance to upgrade and get new equipment for salting purposes. You can see there the highlighted sections of it. We're talking about snowplow blades, calibration of salt spreading equipment. The big ones, though, are salt storage. It would be great to have additional salt storage in here. Asking council if they could help us get this through 3 readings. It's a 100% reimbursable grant. There is no match. The grant deadline is December 31st, and this would be part of the 2025 budget. So just to give you an idea, probably asking about $400,000. The salt storage shed barn would be about $350,000, and then the smaller equipment probably $50,000. So probably about $400,000 we'd budget for. Chances of us getting the salt storage, I'm going to be honest, probably won't happen, but we would probably score one of the small items that we'd probably need as well. Sue, could you go to the next slide, please? Ordinance 2024-59, the Perry Road crossover replacement. As we know, we've been dealing with this for a couple weeks now. The slide to the left there, the picture to the left is what the crossover looks like. You can see it's undulated. There's a separation going on. Slide to the right, the contractor moved in this week. He's potholing there, so he's finding the other utilities. There's gas lines, sanitary lines, water lines there that cross that. So potholing is when you use a vac and water to dig down instead of using an excavator. So I think Mr. Bozick seen that a couple weeks ago when we were out doing that. So it's a safe way to do it. They're moving forward. We're looking at $119,500 for this replacement. Next slide. So there was an uptick to it. We're looking at $92,000. The residents there, so if you look at this map, the red circles where the crossover needs to be replaced. The residents on the north side of that asked if we could enlarge it. We had our hydraulic engineer take a look. You can't go any larger than the next crossover downstream, and that's the white circle down there on Newton. And that was significantly, well, not significantly, it was somewhat larger. We were able to, if we enlarge it, we can help the residents out with 20 cubic feet per second more flow through the culvert if we enlarge it. I think that's worth it. It's not gonna, it's the best we can do. So it will be enlarged, and I think the residents would appreciate that. So this, as you know, is an emergency. I am asking for that $119,000 to be passed this evening so we can get moving on it. You can tell they're already moving on it. So next slide. So this is ordinance 2024-60. This is Perry Road crossover replacement. We need easements. Thankfully, we had this engineered, so we knew we had to get easements. This is what's taken so long. The residents were very helpful. They are on board with this. So tonight, I'm asking that council pass this ordinance to get the 4 easements there. You can see the highlighted sections. There's small easements, 400 square feet might be the largest, 200 might be the smallest. So, and that's to extend the head wall out from the culvert, which will help with the flow issues in there as well. Last slide, Sue, please. Macca Park restroom bid results. We had the bid opening, engineer's estimate was $415. You can see the prices there. $490,630, $75,000 over the engineer's estimate. Council, you want to throw an extra 75 at this? I'm joking. Let me throw out an idea to you. You know, this is ARPA funds. We got about $415,000 there. Why don't we put this in the road paving this year? Because we got to spend it by the end of the year. I don't have time to put together another project, and I'm not asking for 75,000. Why don't we throw 415 in the road paving project and into the bid that we had, and why don't we talk about spending the 415 next year in another project out of general fund, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm out of time. I mean, I can't do another project. There's no way. Just something, just food for thought. And we all laughed about those high prices on that restroom. $500,000. That's crazy. But it is what it is.
I think they heard you talk about it at the last meeting is probably what happened.
We were at 390 last time. We went up 100 this last time we did it. So that's my report. Just letting you know, we're doing away, we're rejecting all bids. We're not going to do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Director of Finance.
Thank you. Everybody received the financial reports, the litany at the beginning of council meeting. Nothing exceptionally strange going on in August, pretty much similar to what was reported last month. If anybody has any specific questions, I'll be glad to answer them, but otherwise I have nothing to add.
Any questions for Director of Finance? No, moving on to Director of Law.
Thank you. I'm happy to report that I've been working with personnel at the middle school and the elementary school to see how we can assist with Red Ribbon Week and bring awareness to drug prevention. And getting ready for drug take back next month. So working on that, and otherwise no report this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for Director of Law? No? All right, moving on to reports of standing committees of Council of the Whole, starting with Planning and Zoning, Councilwoman Gutman.
Thank you, Mr. Bosick. I will call Planning and Zoning to order this evening. We have before us at second reading, ordinance 2024-54, amended on 9/12/24, with a public hearing on 9/26/24 at 7:03 p.m. The amendment was adopted 3-0 by Planning and Zoning, amending the zoning map by rezoning the property of the applicant Brady Bissonette for Living City Farms LLC, Scott Myers owner, located at 683 North Avenue, parcel number 6000949, and 695 North Avenue, parcel number 6000803, consisting of approximately 8.03 acres from R3 residential district to R1 residential district, and approving the general development plan. And I understand that Mrs. Hussing put together a slide deck for us from the Planning and Zoning meeting. If, Madam Clerk, you could play that for us.
Residential R1 from residential R3. The R1 zoning district. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on Thursday, September 5th, 2024, and made a determination on case PZC-24-13, a rezoning request. Good Place Holdings, acting on behalf of the property owner, submitted a request to rezone 695 and 683 North Avenue to residential R1 from residential R3. The R1 zoning district allows for agricultural use as primary uses, while the R3 zoning district allows some agricultural uses as accessory to the primary dwelling use. This land has been used for agricultural purposes as an accessory for many years, which includes the recent expansion involving hoop houses for plant protection. Living City Farms, a subsidiary of Good Place Holdings, is currently farming the land on behalf of the owner. The current increased agricultural operations have turned into a primary use and are not permitted in the R3 zoning district. The application was submitted with a development plan for amendment to the zoning map for review and approval for recommendation by the Commission to City Council. Before submitting the rezoning application, the applicant organized a community meeting on April 27, 2024 at the farm. The purpose of the community meeting was to inform residents about the proposed changes and gather feedback. The applicant submitted a development plan in narrative form outlining the existing land uses and structures and some future expansion. The submitted development plan is acceptable as a general development plan and is included in the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to City Council. The staff report was amended as there was an amendment made by the applicant to the general development plan at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The recommended motion includes the amended version. The area in question includes 2 parcels. The applicant reported the parcel's total acreage as 10 acres in its application, but county records indicate a total of 8.03 acres. Ordinance 2024-54 reflect 8.03 acres. Contingent on the rezoning approval, the 2 parcels will be consolidated into a single address. The consolidation process is an administrative process. The parcels and adjacent parcels to the north, south, and west are zoned R3. The parcels to the east across the street are zoned R1. The general development plan includes the residential use, agriculture, agricultural processing and storage, greenhouses and nurseries, and apiculture, the keeping of bees. As required, the Commission has included the plan in its recommendation to approve the rezoning. By rezoning to an R1 district, any use listed here on this table would be allowed by right or through conditional zoning. The uses in green reflect uses listed in the development plan. In essence, rezoning provides the property owner with the flexibility to utilize the land in a way that aligns with the new zoning district's regulations, whether through immediate development or by meeting specific conditions. Hypothetically, if the property owner at a future time seeks to develop the land with a subdivision, the R1 zoning district would permit a lower density of dwellings compared to the R3 district. However, any development request, regardless of zoning district, would require adherence to the zoning code and its approval processes. This image depicts the existing and planned structures on the property. This image was amended from the original during the meeting and was also included in the updated staff report. The barn, shed, nursery, and hoop houses are all categorized as accessory buildings. According to the zoning regulations, the combined footprint of these accessory buildings cannot exceed 2,500 square feet. However, the applicant has requested a variance to increase this limit to 8,000 square feet. During the meeting, extensive discussion on the potential impact of the hoop houses on neighboring residential properties was had. Based on this discussion, the Commission decided to make the recommendation to City Council to approve the variance. The R1 development standards mostly comply. The standards for minimum side yard setback is 10 feet. However, a minimum 50-foot setback from side yard property lines is a mandatory requirement for all structures used for agricultural uses. The hoop houses impact the required 50-foot setback area. Section 1104.07B2 of the zoning code states minimum 50-foot setback required for structures used for agricultural purposes that do not involve livestock. Hoop houses are set back approximately 20 feet from the side property line. Again, after careful deliberation, the commission determined that the variance should be granted, taking into account any potential impact of the hoop houses on the neighboring residential properties. For the parking standards, the farm employs 3 full-time workers and 1 part-time employee. The total greenhouse area, including the barn, shed, and nursery, is 1,512 square feet. Currently, there is no plan to incorporate retail operations. However, if retail becomes a future possibility, parking will require reassessing. The property has ample space to accommodate any necessary adjustments. The Public Works has also reviewed the application. Both utility and street departments require compliance with the City of Tallmadge construction standards. The images on the left show the parking and truck loading spaces, parking in Block 1 and truck loading areas in Blocks 2 and 3. It should be noted that the easement between both ends of Craig Drive is a utility easement. The existing street configuration, according to the General Development Plan, will remain unchanged. The easement connecting Craig Drive must remain clear of any structures. To ensure access and protect the easement, buildings, equipment, or vehicles are prohibited within or on the utility easement as it contains a 6-inch water main. Additionally, the areas surrounding the fire hydrants located at the edges of Craig Drive where it meets the wooded area must remain unobstructed and unoccupied. Safety forces have also reviewed the application. Both Police Chief Doug Bohan nor Fire Marshal Quick had any comments on this rezoning request. In cases, though, where a special event is to be held, proper applications should be made per the requirements of the zoning code and the safety forces. In summary, the following relief from the code is being recommended for approval by the Commission: that unpaved parking and loading spaces are permitted in accordance with the submitted plans. 2, that the total accessory structure size is limited to 8,000 square feet. 3, that the hoop houses may be located 20 feet from the side property line. The applicant provided responses to the standards for rezoning and the General Development Plan. These are delineated in the staff report with additional responses from the staff. The staff report had been distributed to the Commission and the City Council, as well as the applicant and the owner. Staff report is also published on the city's website in the Agenda Center and the zoning page under active zoning petitions. Based on the review standards and discussions had, a recommendation was made based on both sets of standards to adopt Ordinance 2024-54 to rezone the 2 parcels from the R3 residential zoning district to R1 residential district.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank Mrs. Hussing for that slide deck. That was very informative, if she's listening right now. And given that, before we have our discussion, could I have a motion to adopt the amendment? Just as standard procedure before we discuss.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to adopt. And do we have further discussion?
Yes, Councilwoman Gutman,
Mr. Rubino?
I'd like to, like we previously discussed, I'd like to suggest an amendment to this that prohibits the periodical deliveries off of Craig Drive As previously discussed, I don't think it is fair to the residents of these residential areas to have delivery vehicles going down and up their streets. I feel that if they are receiving deliveries, they should be coming off of Route 91, not through these neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. So for clarification, we're referring to Section 2, Item 3, that the access from Craig Drive at the south property line is limited to intermittent deliveries, and you would like to change that text to say
That there will be no deliveries going,
from Craig Drive.
to or from Craig Drive. Like I said, those are residential streets, and if they're planning on expanding their operation there, I don't think those neighborhoods should be impacted.
Mrs. Gutman, I do believe the applicant is present in the audience here tonight, so I don't know if you want to potentially inquire with regard to that particular item,
I
or if you
actually-
want to go ahead and move forward with the vote on the original motion.
Well,
and
I
second.
have point of order questions
Sure.
for you as well, because it is somewhat confusing in this regard. First is that, do we have a definition for intermittent?
I think it would just be the normal dictionary definition because it's not defined in the actual ordinance itself, so.
I do think that, in my mind, makes some difference. Are we talking one delivery a day, a week, right? And would that be something that we could add ourselves? Okay. And then procedurally, if we are amending the amendment, do we do that separately first?
So you already have a motion and a second on that, so you need to, you can have another motion and second, or you can deal with the first one first and then take the next question into consideration and decide to deal it again. So you may want to vote on the first as written, since you already have your motion and second.
Could the person who made the motion withdraw that motion, though?
If both people wanted to withdraw.
We can withdraw and then ask our applicant to speak.
And then I would make inquiries to the applicant as to what they're doing and what they might be intending to do in the future.
Okay, thank you. I'd ask for the motions to be withdrawn.
I withdraw my motion.
I second the withdrawal.
Thank you.
Withdraw your second.
Withdraw the second.
Thank you. And Mr., thank you. Is this Mr. Brady Bissonette, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Thank you. If you could just say your name and address for the record for
Yeah,
us.
Brady Bissonette, 4835 Darrow Road, Stowe, Ohio, 44224.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here tonight. If you wouldn't mind addressing your expectations for deliveries, how often, size of the trucks, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, the Craig Drive delivery was only intended to be used for items such as wood chips or compost. Infrequent, intermittently was the best I worded it. I would probably say under 15 deliveries per year. It's on an as-need basis. It's not on a recurring schedule. It's more of when our head farm manager is in a shortage, and it's infrequent in terms of it could be once every 3 months or once a month. It's hard to say exactly due to the demands of the farm that year and the weather and how that impacts it.
Do you anticipate if you were unable to use Craig Drive, would that be very burdensome?
It would be burdensome in some regards. The reason why we use that point as a drop-off is just due to the position in which the distance it takes us to carry some of those elements, the wood chips or the compost, to their regarded areas on the farm, and then having those types of trucks enter from North Avenue would be a little more difficult, and we'd most likely need to probably revise the driveway in which it is entering the farm altogether if we have those size of trucks coming over.
So the delivery truck
is it like the equivalent, if someone on Craig Drive is getting mulch delivered,
Yes, correct.
it would be the same kind of, so you could have trucks coming down that road to deliver mulch. It would be the same type of delivery.
Yes.
In that sense. Do you have other types of deliveries outside of that, delivery trucks that would be of larger size coming in and out, even on 91?
No, not currently.
How many ton trucks are you using down Craig Drive?
In terms of what we own, none.
Well, your delivery trucks, whoever's delivering it, is it a 4-ton truck, an 8-ton?
I'm guessing it's anywhere between half ton to maybe 1.5. They're not. I'm a little probably unknowledgeable in terms of the types of the size of the truck.
Well, a Dodge Ram, like a 1500 would be a
I'm
quarter
guessing.
ton.
I'm guessing it's probably minimum 2,500, maybe to a 4,500.
So this is just like a pickup truck?
Yeah, most likely. Yeah. I have not personally oversaw an unloading of one of these as the frequency has not actually demanded my presence there.
So if it's the quantity that a pickup truck would be handling, I can't imagine it would be that incredibly burdensome to take that off of 91, or that it would cause a great inconvenience. You know, if we're not talking about a 4-ton dump or a large dump of some kind, that should be fairly accessible for a pickup. Yes?
Yes, I agree.
Councilwoman Gutman, I have a question for Mr. Bissonnette.
Yes.
So you're not currently using Craig Drive right now?
What do you mean by currently
Or
using?
for deliveries?
I think this overall whole season summer, being from, I think when the rain stopped coming down so much, the late June-ish time to probably the September, October timeframe is when we'll be in season in terms of an average growing. We may have had 1 or 2 deliveries this summer.
Okay, so it's Craig Drive through Fox Ridge, right?
Craig Drive from the south, just onto the property.
From Howe, okay.
Yeah, we have
from
no
Howe, okay.
deliveries coming from the north.
Okay, so how many tons of wood chips do you get, like, in a delivery?
That varies. It depends on who's delivering. Sometimes
What's
we'll
the
have
max?
a max tonnage. Maybe 2.
Okay, yeah, that would be a pickup size. Okay.
And honestly, I'm surprised that's all you're getting. You know, you can see a skid of mulch, you know, a 6-foot skid of mulch at Home Depot would weigh 2,000 pounds. That's a ton. Or maybe even a little over.
Sure.
It's that limited of a quantity?
It's more due to the frequency in which we need it. Wood chips, in terms of how much we're willing to pay for, generally we're getting them from people giving us to us for free, and generally that's not coming in enormous quantities. But in terms of, I think on that map of the loading zones versus the rear part of the drive, I'd say we actually have more consistently have deliveries on the front part lot where the loading zone is.
Loading zone 1 and 2
The
versus 3? Because I
Yeah,
believe
versus
3 is in
3,
the back of your
yeah.
property, right? So we would basically be possibly eliminating loading zone 3.
Yeah, if you guys need us to eliminate loading zone 3, we would be more willing to comply.
Great.
I'm wondering if it would be reasonable to put a limit to the truck size and the frequency, how you all would feel about that, a certain tonnage and maybe once a month, just,
From Craig Drive or from?
from the
North
Craig
End?
Drive.
I'm afraid, I mean, how would we monitor something like that? You know,
I guess it would be the same way all of our other zoning is monitored, you know.
So Councilwoman Gutman, I have a question related to this topic. So if you're coming in from the south side on Craig Drive, which is Howe Road side, the current holders of that area between the dead end of Craig and the other dead end of Craig, who owns that strip of land?
The applicant owns the strip of land, and then there's an easement that exists there that was there in case the road ever connected. And there's utilities there.
So currently,
So that particular strip of land, there's an easement there.
There's
That's
an
why
ea-
we're saying we don't want to have any buildings or any structures on that.
right. So
Their property runs through, if you pull, I don't know if you want to go back to one of the slides, Susan, but
It runs back behind that as well, so it goes through the whole area there.
And in that loading zone 3, you're receiving deliveries there now?
Yes.
Have you received complaints from neighbors about those trucks coming, making those deliveries in that zone now?
No, we've not heard anything.
Did you have a lot of participation in that meeting that you offered to the neighbors?
No, I would say we did not have a high number of participation. We sent multiple notices, requests, included QR codes to a website for additional information. We had one neighbor come by who loves what we do, and that was our support.
The Planning and Zoning Commission met on Thursdays.
Service Director Rohr, at the end of Craig Drive, aren't there posts with red reflectors that prohibit to go past that street?
On the
just to
north side.
protect- On the north side? Okay. There's nothing on the south side, okay.
No.
With the farm increasing in size, would you expect that deliveries could increase of these kind of supplies? Are you guys moving into the wooded section also?
We will not be touching the wooded section at all.
Not ever, or not just right now?
It is in no planning at all. The expansion right now is only a couple more hoop houses on the right side of our beds. And in terms of the total bed development, we wouldn't be expanding any more than we currently are.
Would you expect with this expansion an increase of deliveries?
No, I do not believe so.
And I got one with the deliveries, are they normal, like between 8 and 5? Because
Correct.
obviously we
Yes.
don't. Okay.
Okay. I would propose as a compromise that we define intermittent. And it seems that based on your current volume, once per month would be sufficient. Beyond that, you use the north access.
That's a good question.
Megan, are we, for what I was talking about, what would be required to adopt something like that? A first and a second, and then a vote, or what?
Well, you'd need a motion if you want to make it as part of the entire thing to do the amendment as submitted. In addition, make the following additional amendment. You can make it all as one motion and then have one vote on that, and you would need a motion and a second and then majority to vote in favor of that. So you can combine both things, because I still would highly recommend that the other conditions that you're not discussing at issue right now, that you still, adopt those as well and
We
incorporate
can
those.
combine it into one vote. Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any further questions for Mr. Bissonnette?
I have some further questions related to the accessory structures, I believe is what we're calling them. So within our zoning codes, do we have specific requirements based on, the looks, the upkeep of those accessory structures, anything like that, that it must be
So those are.
county guidelines, things like that?
Yeah, so they're not really, they're not anchored, they're not, and I'm gonna use the wrong terminology because I'm not thinking the right way. They're not a structure that the building department would regulate because they are kind of temporary in nature. They have, and you can probably speak to it better, but they have basically like a vinyl over top of them, and they're just designed, I think they have, they're over top of the bed, the plant bed, in order to keep it sheltered from weather conditions. So it doesn't have those types of requirements. If they were to build one that was large enough that it would be structurally different than what it is as they have them, then that would be a different story. They would have to get all the necessary building department permits and all the inspections and everything. But these are regulated in our code to the extent that they count as an accessory structure. So that's why that issue was raised, is because they have that covering, they become a structure. And so they are looking to have, they have a few now that were the ones in white, and then they are proposing to and I believe you had said like over the next year or so, couple years, to build the ones that are in red that are proposed. And then any change beyond that, they would have to come back, because part of the conditions that would be in this allowance is that they would only have that development plan as submitted. So you're adopting and incorporating what they submitted, and in addition, you're limiting the amount of the accessory structure square footage that they're permitted to have through the ordinance. So any changes would come back.
Thank you. So based on the current, I'll call them shelters you have, and I believe there's a barn there as well, which would count, I guess, a deduction from that 8,000 currently, because it's already existing.
No, all the accessory structures are included altogether toward that 8,000.
Towards the 8,000, right? So
And so it's all the existing, and then what is proposed on the plan.
do you know the square footage of existing structures currently?
So, yes. In total, the plan, in terms of like what's just in place currently, it's a little around 4,200 square feet on average right now. And the plan also has the structures would take us to about 7,200, 7,238, I think that number might be right, of total accessory structures. And our property owner, Scott Myers, would like to build a garage for the primary residence, so that's why we have it up to 8,000.
It's that building that's like also in red on the,
Yeah, it's
on the
it's
plans.
number
Got
7.
it.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions for Mr. Bissonnette? Okay, thank you so much.
you.
Okay. And is there any further discussion on the proposed definition of intermittent as 1 per month? Any thoughts on that?
I'd like there to be a motion removing Zone 3 and limiting deliveries to the front of the facility.
So your suggestion is no intermittent deliveries?
Correct.
So point of order, Councilmember Rubino, if you could just put that in a motion to amend the ordinance, and then state what. the
If there's no
amendment
further discussion, then I am open to voting. Do we, I don't know, do we just? If you have two, do you vote on both of them? Two different proposals, or do we have to decide on one proposal?
Well, you can make a motion and vote on that one first, and then if that one either fails or passes, that would determine whether you needed another motion.
Okay. Okay. So I think I will ask for a motion, and correct me if I'm not saying this correctly, a motion to amend ordinance 2024-54, amended as adopted by Planning and Zoning on 9/12, with the change to Section 2, Item 3, to define intermittent as one delivery per month.
So if I can just clarify that that this is to amend the ordinance to incorporate the recommendations of planning and zoning as presented in the amended draft ordinance, and then include a definition under item number 3, that intermittent deliveries shall be defined as no more than one per month.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion for that, as stated by Mrs. Rayburn?
So, point of order, if we, knowing that we have a potential amendment to your amendment of saying that there's going to be no permitted deliveries on the back of the property, your definition of intermittent is related to deliveries on the rear of the property or in general?
So this would only be related to Craig Drive, that's correct. So if item 3 is eliminated, it wouldn't even be necessary. I'm not proposing deliveries are limited to once per month, all over just Craig Drive. Does that clarify it?
Well, again, I'd like to propose an amendment to ordinance 2024-54 that would remove delivery zone 3 and limit deliveries to only off of Route 91.
So do we have to address the first one first?
So you called for a motion, but I did not hear.
I think we didn't get there yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then I believe Mr. Rubino did just make a motion. So we would address his first because he made the motion, but he still needs a second.
So I second Councilman Rubino's amendment to the ordinance.
And it needs to be framed like you still need to incorporate those other changes.
Point of order, I would not have called on anyone else before my motion was addressed, before my amendment was addressed.
Okay.
Had that been made?
So why don't you, for the sake of ease, before we get into a long, prolonged back and forth about the motions, why don't we just kind of
have everyone kind of indicate which way, what direction they may be leaning and what thing they may be supporting, so that it might be more clear as to which motion may carry. A straw poll might be helpful at this point.
Just a question, if I may. What if it was rephrased in a way that would say max deliveries per year under specific circumstances? As like a, I'm just thinking in terms of, rather than once per month, what if it was, 6 times per year under various circumstances such as
The only-
droughts or, materials excess needed?
The only concern I have with that is there's no way to monitor how many deliveries are actually being delivered, or any way of telling that that's how many are actually going there. As this farm grows, after rezoning this agricultural, whether that takes 1 year, 10 years, whatever, I think that versus having a camera set up or some way to monitor that, which isn't realistic, that, they've stated that it would not create an extreme inconvenience taking it off the main road. And I think that there's no way to monitor putting a limit or saying intermittent for those deliveries.
So I think it is similar to a lot of other conditions that have gone through council and through ordinances, and the way that those are monitored is typically if we receive a complaint, then we will investigate and pursue that. So, there is an amount of trust and respect for the law that this is getting passed as a law, and so the owners and operators have indicated when they came in front of planning and zoning that they would, respect whatever that was. So I just want to point that out, that we have these quite frequently, and in this, situation, I think that's how.
I don't mean to discredit the property owners or how the farm has been conducting whatsoever, but the reason we're here is because they haven't followed the zoning code.
Well, the reason we're here is because it did start off as an accessory use. So there is a primary structure that is the house. And so, as was pointed out in the presentation, over time it has grown, and they wanted to become in compliance, so they began the process, and they met with the neighbors, and they're trying to make sure that they are compliant, which is why they're presenting.
And that's perfectly fine, and I think that's great how we're going about this. But I just wanted to remind us that the reason we're asking for a rezoning is because they were not in compliance previously. So there's nothing to say that they wouldn't be in compliance in the future, but if they weren't compliant previously, there's no way to gauge whether or not deliveries would be at the rear of the property at any given time, whether we put intermittent or whether we don't put intermittent, whether we produce or allow them to only have deliveries through the front of the property. So I think if we look at this and say only deliveries through the front of the property, it's very, very simple. Any deliveries going to the rear of the property, that's not permitted. That is very easily for our neighbors, our citizens that are in that area to say, like, hey, I don't think you guys should be going through here with trucks.
I can appreciate that, and I'm willing to withdraw that amendment. My concern is that I'm not wanting to put undue burdens on small businesses within this community that are growing, and trying to make a compromise that won't burden the neighbors surrounding, but also helps work with the business. So that's where I was coming from on that. But again, recognizing the majority here, I'm willing to withdraw that and would entertain another proposal. I don't know if we actually had the full.
We had a motion.
was it does it fully state it enough for the record?
I don't think so, so.
Okay.
I think that Mr. Rubino's motion wasn't going to accomplish what we want to do as far as incorporating the rest of the amendments for the planning and zoning. So, and then Mr. Pavlik's looking like he wants to say something really badly, so. So you do need to amend it tonight so that you have it at third reading when it comes to public hearing at the end of the month.
All right, okay.
So anytime you amend, it reverts it back to second reading. So that's why we want to make an amendment at second reading so that when it moves forward, it's moving forward at third reading and could actually be adopted after the public hearing.
Got it, okay. Understood, thank you.
Okay, yep. So I would suggest that the motion is made to amend the ordinance in accordance with the planning and zoning recommendations as presented with the additional amendment to modify item number 3 in section 2 to eliminate, to basically, and you'll have to clarify my referring to that, to state that no deliveries are permitted from the south line, from Craig Drive at the south property line. Is that what you wanted to say?
Correct, the south property line, but really also the north. That's why I brought up just eliminating the, what is it, number 3
You
delivery
want to just
area?
delete that?
And limiting deliveries only to the front of the business.
Okay.
Couldn't you just say the access from Craig Drive at the south property line is prohibited for deliveries? And just leave it at that?
Well, that's what I said,
Yeah.
but that's not what Mr. Rubino said.
Well, would that possibly open up deliveries then just to the north through Fox Ridge?
I mean,
No, there's
a block.
barriers.
There's a barrier.
There's
there.
barriers there. There's barriers at the end. That's why I asked.
Okay.
It's on the other, yeah.
Okay. So, if Mr. Rubino accepts that friendly amendment, and Mr. Bozick, who seconded his
I do.
motion, will also accept that friendly amendment, then we can proceed. And what is on the floor at this point is that we are accepting, I'll try to restate it, is that the motion is to amend ordinance 2024-54 to incorporate the planning and zoning recommendations as presented, but modify section 2, number 3, to say that access from Craig Drive at the south property line is prohibited.
I accept the motion.
Is there a new
Second.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Seeing as we have a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I agreed with your earlier point, Ms. Gutman. I don't think it's necessary to put the additional burden on a small business. Other neighbors on that street are permitted to have deliveries of the same size truck on that street. So it seems to give more favorable treatment to the resident than over the small business. So I would not be supportive of eliminating line 3 after talking and hearing a little bit more about what those deliveries entail specifically.
And
Thank you. Any further comments? Mr.
just one last thing, with the amendment as it stands, we want to add any kind of special circumstance of where it would be permitted, per request to planning and zoning, in any special circumstance, that would be needed based on that access. Again, more ad hoc as needed. We want to add that in there so that,
I'd be fine with that.
yeah. So I feel like that's a happy medium, so it'd be per request under those special circumstances.
Yeah.
Just trying to help.
So, do you want to, we can do it you can do it two different ways. You can vote on the original motion, which was seconded, or you can make another motion at this point and have that be seconded to amend it.
I think we just vote on the original motion.
Okay, so you want to go ahead and proceed with that, and then you could always decide to make another motion after they vote on that one, okay? And keep in mind that you have to have 5 votes because you are changing the recommendation in planning and zoning, so you do need a supermajority. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, then. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mary Gutman,
No.
Donald Pavlik,
No.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
No.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Jessica Epstein,
No.
Thank you. The motion is failed 4-3.
Someone like to make another motion?
Yes, I'd like to motion that, I believe this is section 2, item 3 be amended to state the access from Craig Drive at the south property line is prohibited from intermittent deliveries with the exception per special request to planning and zoning.
And you were also incorporating the rest of the amendments as submitted by Planning and Zoning Commission.
Correct.
If I could summarize what motion you made.
Yeah.
You made a motion to amend the ordinance in accordance with Planning and Zoning Commission recommendations with the additional modification to section 2, subsection 3, that access from Craig Drive at the south line is prohibited from intermittent deliveries except with an except, what you said was deliveries with an exception.
By exception.
Except by exception from planning and zoning.
We have a procedure for this.
No.
Just gonna repeat my question. Is there a second on that one?
I'll second it.
Can we discuss?
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I do have a question because, I'm sorry, but I feel like it's going to, that's like that's a worse burden on the small business. Because what exactly would that look like to get permission? Would they have to go to a planning and zoning meeting and present something?
No, I mean, what I was thinking was just a medium between just, contacting the department, and describing the scenario, and evaluating that, case by case, and understanding that at max it was potentially once per month. At minimum, I heard 6 times or less per year. Again, on an exception basis, he had noted access, from North Ave at times, could be restricting based on the scenario. So again, I was just trying to find a medium.
And I think we already know what planning and zoning would say if they did ask, because they've already made the recommendation to allow it.
I think that's actually an excellent point, Ms. Epstein. And Mr. Bullis, I really appreciate that, that suggestion for the compromise. I'll go back to saying, I think if we just define intermittent, and we do have mechanisms for residents to make complaints to planning and zoning, and for those items that we vote on to be enforced. So I would be against putting any additional burden on the business owner or on planning and zoning by creating an additional process. Any other discussion?
I believe there's a motion, first and seconded.
Yes, that's why I was asking if there's any additional discussion. Okay, then, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Donald Pavlik,
Yes.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Jessica Epstein,
No.
Mary Gutman,
No. Thank you. The motion has passed 5-0.
5-2.
5-2, I'm sorry. I was even looking at 2. Okay, and so ordinance 2024-54 has been amended. And okay, we also have at second reading, ordinance 2024-55 with Exhibit A, and hopefully amended on tonight, with the planning and zoning recommendations adopted 3-0, and a public hearing set for 9/26/24 at 7:05 p.m. Amending and supplementing Part 11, Planning and Zoning Code, Section 1104.05, Use Regulation Tables, Section 1104.07E2.1, Use Regulations, Adult Use Cannabis and/or Medical Marijuana Operators, and Appendix A of the Tallmadge Codified Ordinances, and repealing Tallmadge Codified Ordinance, Chapter 766, Medical Marijuana Cultivation, Processing, and Retail Dispensing. Sponsored by myself, Donald Pavlik, and Ted Roy. Okay. Do I have a motion to amend and adopt the planning and zoning recommendations?
Madam, Councilwoman Gutman, I have a question related to this prior to any motion, if that's permitted.
I believe we motion and then we discuss.
We do, but we can also do it where you discuss and then have a motion, just
Perhaps
especially on the roll that
to
we're
learn from our
tonight, maybe.
experience in the last ordinance.
I don't know that we're so stuck on Robert's rules these days anyway. Okay.
I'll keep my question very brief and to the point. So my question would be, are we permitted to not allow within 500 feet of any public property? I know we got specific in public library, public park, public playground, public trails, schools, but I didn't see anything that called out exactly public-owned property. For example, fire station, Station 1, Station 2, City Hall, the police department.
So we did not call that out. We were primarily mirroring off of the regulations that have been adopted by the state of Ohio. And so the only additional thing kind of called out was to clarify, because they say public parks, so we wanted to make sure that we clarified so there's no confusion about the Metro Park Trail, because it's actually owned by
Correct,
Metro
yes.
Transit Authority. But no, we did not make it any public property. But we do have the authority under this legislation that was passed by the state to determine how we want to zone these. So yes, you can put additional restrictions on that.
So, because I'd like to bring to light, if you look at the maps, the large maps we were provided, if you look at and are able to locate where City Hall would be and where the police department would be, you could literally have one of these open up very close, if not across the street or next door to the police department. And in addition, you could also have one open right next door to Fire Station 2. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But so I just wanted to bring that to light, and if that's something we would consider.
So you would have to, I would want to like further define that to, I'm cautious that we own we own property, like the city owns property, and I don't know if we need to flush out exactly what the definition of public property is if it's used for municipal purposes or something, because there are properties, for example, along West Avenue that we own that then would make anything within 500 feet of that not be usable, if that is something that council wants to have usable, so.
And those properties are owned for spurring economic development, so that would kind of be against the reason why we do own some of those properties as well.
So can we define it as city-owned property that has safety forces or some sort of safety component to it, that we would exclude those properties?
Can you just specifically state City Hall?
Yeah.
The fire department?
Fire Station 2, and, I mean, yeah, that's essentially,
So, yeah, we could say municipal building,
public service buildings, public safety buildings.
public safety, public service. I mean, what about, well, that's in residential, so I was thinking about that old Tallmadge asphalt property, but that's all residential back there, so that wouldn't count. Osceola, do you want to prohibit everything within that radius, because that is an industrial area, and is that a place that you might want to see a processor or, you know?
I don't think that's public safety on Osceola, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, granted, it's road there, but I'm specifically, I guess, targeting City Hall, Police Station, Fire Station 1, Fire Station 2.
So if that is all you want, then maybe we just flat out say.
Yeah, I'd say just state that,
those.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll make an amendment to ordinance 2024-65, or, excuse me, I'll make an amendment to ordinance 2024-55 that states that cannabis or facilities would be prohibited near City Hall, Fire Station 1, Fire Station 2, and the police station.
Well, I'd like to put it within the text of
Okay, yeah.
of this.
Yeah.
So I would say you're talking about the use regulation, which is under section 1104.07E 2.1. And it would be the use regulation, it would be the first bullet. No dispensary shall be located within 500 feet of any parcel having the following prohibited facilities: church, public library, public or private school, public playground, public park, police safety forces.
Safety forces defined as police headquarters,
Well, let's just put police,
City Hall,
police, station,
police station,
fire station, and.
Fire Station 1,
municipal
Fire
building.
Station 2,
And city hall building.
yeah, City Hall, yeah.
Okay, police station, fire station. City hall. building, and Metro Freedoms Park Trail.
Correct,
So that would be the amendment.
correct.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to say thank you to our law director for clarifying this evening's amendments.
I will second that. Thank you very much.
All right, so I think we already did that, where we said all that, and then we got to that part, and we just kind of worked through the logistics, so we're good, we should be good.
Okay, so we have said everything we need to say to make it official. Thank you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Jessica Epstein,
Yes.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Donald Pavlik,
Yes.
Thank you. Amendment to ordinance 2024-55 is passed 7-0. Okay. And that is all I have before planning and zoning. Is there anything else tonight? Okay, seeing nothing, I will close planning and zoning.
Thank you. A lot to work through on those, so thank you for everyone's patience. Moving on to our Finance Committee, Councilman Pavlik.
All right, I call the Finance Committee to order. Finance Committee deals with budget, appropriations, reappropriations, bonds, franchises, investments, and expenditures. We have four first reading ordinances. First up is ordinance 2024-56, authorizing the mayor to apply for and accept, if awarded, the H2 Ohio Rivers Initiative Chloride Reduction Grant through Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and providing for immediate enactment. Sponsor of this is Director of Public Service, Mr. Rohr. This ordinance has been read into record. Is there any further discussion, Mr. Rohr?
Thank you, Councilman. Just as I noted in my report, this is for salt apparatuses or salt domes, and it's worth trying to get the money for it.
Noted. Is there any discussion on council floor? Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on those motions? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Jessica Epstein,
Yes.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Donald Pavlik.
Yes.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Okay, with that, ordinance 2024-56 passes with a motion of 7-0.
Thank you.
Next is ordinance 2024-57, Exhibit A, authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the County of Summit and other political subdivisions for job creation, retention, and tax revenue sharing, providing for a needed enactment. Sponsor of this ordinance is Mayor Kilway. Mayor, this motion has been read on record. Mayor, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, I'm going to defer to Mrs. Gilbright. She knows this inside and out. I do know this, but she'll be able to articulate it better than I can.
Thank you. This is an agreement that we have actually been party to, as you can see in the ordinance, for a number of years. What occurred was, at the end of last year, communities came together to review the agreement to see if there were any updates needed. At that time, there were discussions had, and basically there were two items that came out of that are being changed here. One was amending the agreement to include a sample tax sharing agreement for communities to use and incorporating that within the document. It's just a sample for communities to use. It does not mean that's what the final agreement has to be. It just was to enable communities who don't do it very often to have a starting point. Second item that was discussed and language was added was in section 4. There were several paragraphs added about work from home since COVID changed a lot of that. We wanted to clarify that work from home jobs were not job relocations. And so there's just some clarification about what constitutes payroll and work from home jobs versus moving jobs and that kind of thing. So those are basically the two main components that were added. They also modified it. It used to be that this agreement like came up and kind of ended every year. So it's becoming basically, they added language to make it a continuous agreement until the community opts out of the agreement, or that there's changes that need to be made to the agreement. There's a number of cities that have already adopted this and are participating throughout the county. I can provide you with that list. So just to give you time to review, technically this is effective, the effective date on this is October 1st. However, if, we need to go into 3 readings, it's not an issue if people are concerned and want to take more time to review it. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Then I would recommend that we let it go to next reading possible. Maybe adoption, second reading, and make it to the full 3.
Agreed. Agreed.
Councilman Pavlik, I have just one question related to this. Do we have a similar agreement with bordering counties, meaning like Portage County?
No, this is strictly a Summit County.
Just Summit County?
Just a Summit County agreement.
Has that ever been talked about or discussed?
I am not aware that there are communities in Portage County that have this kind of, Portage County has a lot more rural area, and so they don't have all the communities touching that are relying on income tax. There's a lot of townships and those kind of
Right.
things, so this doesn't become as much of an issue. I don't believe in Portage County because you're talking about most cities in Portage County aren't bordering another city that's a taxing district. So they're more talking about a city with income tax and a business moving to a township that doesn't have an income tax. So I don't think that there's this kind of an issue that you would find in Portage
Okay.
County.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Gilbride. Okay, we will move that into second reading. Next up is ordinance 2024-58, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract without competitive bidding and through the state purchasing program or as authorized by RC 125.04C with the Ohio State University for the purchase of computer equipment, software licenses, and related equipment, and providing for a needed enactment. Sponsor of this ordinance is Mayor Kilway. This ordinance has been read into record. Mayor Kilway, would you like to address council on this?
Yes, this is, it's basically a housekeeping item. You typically would have seen this in the beginning of the year. However, there was a company that was being bought out by another company, and I'll let Joe Nuzito go further into this. So, hand it off to Joe.
As the mayor said, this renewal was budgeted. What happened is that Broadcom was buying VMware. VMware is a software that allows us to run our virtual machines, as you recall, for the appropriation. So what happened is that during that purchase time, the state purchasing program, during the time that Broadcom was purchasing VMware, they would not allow any additional agreements to be entered into. They finally have come to their new pricing. We received it a few weeks ago, and now we're asking to do this. I would ask for adoption at first reading because, as the mayor pointed out in her email to you, this expired about 3 weeks ago.
And thank you for that email, Mayor Kilway. With that, is there any comments? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, you please call the roll.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Jessica Epstein,
Yes.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Donald Pavlik,
Yes.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Okay, with that, ordinance 2024-58 passes with a motion of 7-0.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next up is ordinance 2024-59, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Cement Tech, Inc. without competitive bidding due to an emergency, the Perry Road and South Monroe Road drainage crossover pipe, appropriating the necessary funds, declaring an emergency, and providing for immediate enactment. Sponsor of this ordinance is Director of Public Service, Mr. Rohr. This ordinance has been read into record. Mr. Rohr, anything to add?
Yeah, so this is an emergency, but because we had to secure the easements, we had the opportunity to solicit 3 quotes, and Cement Tech, which is a well-known company here in town, does a lot of work for us, they came in with the lowest and best quote, so it's a good number.
Council have any questions? Question?
I'd motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Hearing none.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Jessica Epstein,
Yes.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Donald Pavlik,
Yes.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Okay, with that, ordinance 2024-59 passes with a motion of 7-0.
Thank you.
That concludes all the ordinances tonight. Is there anything else that needs to be brought before finance? Hearing none, I will close finance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to personnel, Councilman Bullis.
Good evening. I call Personnel Committee to order. Personnel Committee deals with personnel, labor relations, insurance claims, rules of council, and state statutes. We have no ordinances or resolutions this evening. Is there anything to come before Personnel Committee from either council or administration?
I have one question for the administration. Our union contracts are obviously in negotiation at this moment.
Yes, currently we're negotiating with the Teamsters. Our next meeting with them is actually tomorrow morning. No, Tuesday morning. And then we also have in early October a meeting with our initial meeting with the International Association of Firefighters Local.
Okay, thank you.
Another question. When do we expect these contracts to be wrapped up and executed?
The goal, obviously, is to have them wrapped up by the end of the year, and so.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And similar to our discussion on the Finance Committee, meeting kind of prior to the working session, could we have a similar meeting to review this with the Personnel Committee? When it's appropriate?
Yes, we only have, as I said, one contract. I think we're within the next meeting or two. I think we're relatively close, which is why we're moving on to firefighters in early October, the first week.
Okay.
And I do believe we'll have like an executive session with council throughout the time period to bring you up to date with what's going on with each contract, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other items to come before Personnel Committee this evening? All right. Thank you. Closed committee.
All right, thank you. Moving on to safety, Councilman Rubino.
Thank you. I call Safety Committee to order. The Safety Committee deals with disaster services, communications, fire, and paramedics, police, and health. We do have one resolution on the docket for today. Resolution 2024-5, a resolution declaring the month of September 2024 as a National Preparedness Month in Tallmadge to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and emergencies and providing for immediate enactment. The sponsor of this resolution is council and administration. Is there any comments or questions from the sponsors or council or administration?
Sir, I have just one comment. I just want to thank the administration for helping us move forward with this resolution. And to anyone that is out there watching on YouTube, I would highly recommend that everyone visit, I believe it's ready.gov. And if they would like to visit that site, there's a lot of good information on there for preparedness for all different types of disasters and emergencies.
Any others? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, can we call the roll?
Jessica Epstein,
Yes.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Donald Pavlik,
Yes.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Resolution 2024-5 passes 7-0. Is there any other business or questions for the Safety Committee? Hearing none, I close committee.
Thank you. Moving on to community issues, Councilman Roy.
Yes, I'd like to open community issues. Community issues committee deals with parks and recreation, civic affairs, and liaison between council and the recreation board and intergovernmental affairs. Tonight, we don't have any ordinances. Is there any additional items anybody would like to bring up? If not, I will go ahead and close community issues. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to public service, Councilwoman Epstein.
Thank you. I call Public Service Committee to order. The Public Service Committee deals with streets, highways, sidewalks, buildings, and improvements, water, sewer, electricity, gas, energy resources, recycling, waste, and trash. We have before us this evening ordinance number 2024-60, Exhibit A, authorizing the creation, acceptance of drainage easements at 590 Perry Road, 609 Perry Road, 629 Perry Road, and 944 South Monroe Road, and providing for an immediate enactment. The sponsor is Director of Public Service, Roar. Do you have any additional comments? You've been pretty detailed thus far.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank those 4 residents. They were very easy to work with and very understanding, and it was a pleasure dealing with them, so.
Excellent, thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move to adopt at first reading.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Donald Pavlik,
Yes.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Jessica Epstein,
Yes. Ordinance 2024-60 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's the only ordinance before us this evening. We have nothing else. Are there any other items for Public Service Committee? Hearing none, I close committee.
Thank you. Moving on to reports of special committees, Council Operations Committee, anything to report, sir?
Just that I inquired via email to Dove AV and our IT department to look into the audio of the video recording, just for future presentations to understand if that was a setting or if we need to look at any kind of audio enhancements for the budget in 2025. So we'll keep you updated on that.
And I would also like to add, we've, and I don't know where we're at with it, but I know in an email I had asked about the capability of us on council to be able to control the screens at any location at any given time during the presentation. Or
Yeah, I had a discussion on that. I can follow up and just verify, but I believe the complexity of that project wasn't viable for the setup we have, but I will check on it.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
I had one question that I received from a resident, and I apologize, I just can't remember the date of trick or treat this year because Halloween falls on a Thursday.
And so we're going to take advantage of that.
Okay.
And trick or treat is on that Thursday, October 31st.
Okay. Thank you very much for verifying that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, any other announcements? Hearing none, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk.
Donald Pavlik,
Yes.
Ted Roy,
Yes.
Nick Rubino,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Jessica Epstein,
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
All right, the time is 8:54 and we are adjourned.